What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another preview / prediction video. And today we are here to preview Monday Night Football, Lions, 49ers. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we're back with another preview / prediction video. Now, I told you guys earlier this week I was going to try to make this a little bit shorter. All right, it's going to be less of a deep dive of a breakdown, but it was still going to be a form of a breakdown. And that's what it's going to be today. I'm still going to show clips, still going to talk through some notes. I'm just going to try to do it a little bit quicker, all right, and a little bit less maybe in depth. Okay, that way these videos aren't 50 minutes to an hour long. So with that being said, let's waste no time. Let's get right into it. First off, a couple of injury updates for this game. On the Lions side of things, a lot of good. We're not sure on Jalen Reeves-Maybin. He's currently questionable for this game, though I'm actually optimistic he's going to be up for this game. We don't know for sure. Quan Alexander was added back to the practice squad. It's nice to get him back after letting him go. And Mo Norris, the safety, cornerback to safety in the NFL, has been signed to the active roster. I don't know how long that will last, but with Brandon Joseph gone, bringing him to the active roster definitely could bring some special teams value, because that is the area that he is just built to be awesome, is on special teams. Love the dude out of Fresno State. Loved him in the preseason, so he's officially on the 53-man roster. But Kylie Freeman is out for this game, as well as David Montgomery. Those two were expected. However, Graham Glasgow is set to play, so the offensive line is set to be intact for this game. The unfortunate side, though, for San Fran is their offensive line is not set to be intact at all for this game. But Colton McKivitz, currently their right tackle, their starting right tackle, who popped up this week, didn't practice on Friday, is currently questionable. So there is still a path for him to be playing in this game. The opposite side of the line of scrimmage is a mess for San Fran at this point. I mean, the left tackle position, Burford, is set to be out for this game. They're also not going to be with Aaron Banks, who is the starting left guard, but Burford was the backup to Trent Williams, who is also not going to be available. And then it went to Jalen Moore, and he's also not going to be available. So the entire side of the left line is kind of a mess. It could be Charlie Heck, who they recently added. They also added Matt Hennessy, who could potentially kick into a guard position. I will say that I don't think Aaron Banks has played that well, at least in recent games, so we'll see how much of a drop-off that really leads to there, but it could also be a concern that he hasn't played incredibly well, in my opinion, and he was the starter. He was the guy. They still do have Brendel, and they still do have the right guard, Dominic Pooney, who are going to be playing in this game. So they have a couple of pieces, but only 2 of the 5 are really the normal pieces to this offensive line. It's kind of a mess over there. The positive for them is that Isaac Warendo is set to play in this game. They're running back, so they're going to get a little bit depth back there with Patrick Taylor and all the flexibility that they use with Debo at running back and Kyle Hughes checking those spots. But then the one I'm circling is the cornerback position. Charvarius Ward is currently questionable, listed with personal. That'd be one to keep an eye on. I don't know if he's going to play or not, but I will say that he is their number 1 corner. He's not their best statistical corner, but he is their number 1. He plays the number 1 receiver. And if he's out, could they potentially go to a guy like Isaac Yiadom? And if he is also out, how does that change certain matchups? We know Yiadom from New Orleans, but how does that change certain matchups the Lions will get out wide in this game versus expectation if a guy like that is not going? That's the one that I'm really circling for this one. I think that's key. We'll see where that's at. And then as we know, their linebacker position is a little bit banged up as well. Lighter there with guys like D. Winters playing a ton. We'll see your quick little injury updates. We'll get the full inactives on game day, but I want to waste no more time. Let's get right into this. Let's preview 49ers offense and 49ers defense. And let's start right there first with the 49ers offense. One thing that stuck out to me is how versatile their personnel is offensively. I mean, it's different than any team that I've seen to this point. You'll have teams that'll run jumbo like Bills, teams running offensive lineman at fullback, that kind of thing. But 49ers are probably the most versatile personnel type of team. When you talk about playing like 0-1 personnel formations, right? Maybe 1 tight end, no backs on the field, 1 running back. Like, they have some very strange 13 personnel. They do it all offensively, and so much of that is because Kyle Juszczyk will play a running back, he'll line in line as a tight end. You have a guy like Deebo Samuel who plays everywhere as well, so he makes them very flexible. That is the one key for me, because I'm curious to see how the Lions match up with different personnel looks. How consistent are the Lions to matching the personnel of the opposing team, knowing that there's that kind of flexibility. Like, there is no running back on the field and Debo's at running back. They match that personnel-wise. Say if there's 2 tight ends, Debo's at running back, how the Lions decide to match that personnel-wise, right? They come out in base? Do they come out in nickel? Like, how do the Lions approach those things, and how often are they having to put 3 linebackers on the field? That'd be the other thing I'd watch for. Last week, Ben Neiman played a lot, played really well against the run, and then this week, potentially getting a guy like Jalen Reeves-Maybin back. How much flexibility do we see there? How often the Lions say we're going 3 backers versus saying, hey, we're going to keep 3 safeties essentially on the field by keeping Brian Branch out there with Ife Melifonwu, seeing how much variety they actually have in what they do offensively. It's what has made them so dynamic, is that everybody seemingly is a threat with the ball in their hands, and a guy like Ricky Pearsall, who in my opinion is really coming along for them, becomes a pretty well-rounded matchup at wide receiver. Their wide receiver core gets a little bit more flexible with Deebo Samuel and Isaac Guerendo coming back, where you can have Juwan Jennings kind of be their number one on the outside, as well as Ricky Pearsall, and put Deebo at back. So they got a lot of flexibility there. But in terms of how they actually run the football, this is still a very heavy zone rushing team with a little bit of variety there, a lot of outside zone rushing. On the offensive line, it's pretty banged up. I think Pooney's actually had some real struggles with some of their outside zone runs. They have a ton of athletic offensive linemen, so we could see Nick at left guard, the former tackle that's went to guard for them. We could see a matchup like that. Things had struggled. He honestly was the most inconsistent player, I think, as a run blocker when I was going through it, so how much of a downgrade actually is that going to be? But you would have a player like that, and then you'd have a rookie on the opposite side there, so the guard position is definitely one to circle when you talk about a lot of those outside zone runs, and they also have the toss version of their outside zone runs as well. I would say a huge part of their run scheme, there's a couple of position groups that are going to be important for the Lions as usual. Number one would be defensive backs. They have a lot of close splits with their receivers when they run the football, and there's also a lot of movement there as well, but they block really well. Guys like Juwan Jennings, they all block. Deebo will block. Those guys block really well, so I would circle that specifically, because when you have a guy like Brian Branch who's now playing in the slot, who may be a little bit more involved in that action, how does that kind of play out? And then also the linebacker position, okay? They do some creativity with their offensive line schemes where they kind of take the offense and defensive line out of the play and get up to second level really well. So how well are the linebackers feeling avoiding blocks at the second level, right? Not getting caught up and allowing big chunk runs, but instead shutting them down before they even get started. Jack Campbell's been so good so far this season, but I really circle who's going to be next to him. Does it continue to be Ben Neiman? That'd be my expectation. He played the run really well last week. So how does that play out, where I think you need to be very aggressive in those spots? Obviously, play action is what makes them dangerous because they can tie those two things together, but really, how aggressive can we be with the linebacker position opposite of Jack Campbell in this game against the run? Because the outside zone is kind of the go-to, but then they also utilize their stretch run a lot. And again, this comes back to the guard position for me, because that's where things can get blown up, whether that's cutback lanes or even on the front side of plays, force back the opposite direction. So DJ Reader, Levi potentially in this game, Pat O'Connor, is going to be a really fun matchup because of his ability to get off the ball versus a very athletic offensive line. That's going to be fun to just see how many plays he can actually disrupt. But of course, for me, it comes back to DJ Reader. I want to see how well DJ Reader handles a lot of those double teams. They try to play early combo blocks, create movement there, and there's been times where they haven't been able to create movement, and it shuts down the run, and it's 2 yards, it's 3 yards. They have very dynamic pieces once the ball gets in their hands, but that's where you shut these things down, is between those defensive tackles. So for me, I think DJ Reader needs to help us a lot in this game, and I think that he's built to help us a lot in this game. And then finally, you get those inside runs, those inside zone runs, and this is where I think you get a lot of the creativity. You get it from offset running back looks, you'll get it when Deebo's in the backfield or Kyle Juszczyk in these spots. And by the way, if Deebo Samuel's at running back, expect him to get the ball in some way, whether it's a run play, maybe it's an angle route of the backfield. He's probably getting the football if he's put in there at running back. That's been such a crucial part of this offense, because actually over the last few weeks, they've been a little bit more pass heavy on first down than actually run heavy, which is not typically what you would think of San Fran, at least for me personally. I think a lot of that has to do with the banged up offensive line, some of the inconsistency there, and then just not having the normal backs they have, like Christian McCaffrey, who they can just lean on in those spots. So you're actually going to get a little bit more heavy passing on early downs. That's where when you get guys that are different in the backfield, to get those offset looks, and there's a lot of creativity that plays into some of their split zone runs, or even just their simplified inside zone runs, some of their delays out of it. When you get that, you can expect to run a little bit more. So obviously you need to stop that, but it does transition them a little bit more into wanting to throw the football on early down. Going to that spot of throwing the ball on early downs, I had them slightly heavier passing than rushing on first down over the last few weeks. I think you want to be aggressive against this team just in general. Like, that was one of my biggest takeaways, is against these receivers, I want to see the Lions be aggressive defensively. I have no issue with a lot of man coverage in this game. I want to see us be aggressive. Throwing off timing is everything, regardless of how you do that. If that's pressing corners, if that's blitzing and throwing off a little bit of timing there, or it's simply dropping 8 into coverage, maybe taking away an extra window, or just covering really well in your base coverages, matching coverage potentially to kind of clean up some windows, a little bit tighter coverage. I wouldn't be playing as off. Like, a lot of their route concepts in breakers, 15 to 20 yards, right? That's where a lot of their work happens, at intermediate levels of the field. So a little more aggression, even if it's at a man press, even just a little bit more aggression in kind of their safety depth, that kind of thing. Obviously, you become susceptible to the big play over top, but that's where their offense lives. It doesn't live over top. It lives in that intermediate area. So everything for me is about throwing off timing. Finding a way to try to throw off timing is everything. Now, when you get to the second down situation, second and medium spots, you'll get a lot of screens, and that's what they seemingly did against Miami, was they were like, okay, let's run a ton of tight end screens. They have a lot of guys that are really good with the ball in their hands. We're going to run a lot of those. Found success. And then on second and long situations, you're going to, of course, going to get them be a little more pass heavy, and that's where you get a lot of the in breakers. It's where you get a lot of the mesh concept. A lot of their game plan works between the numbers outside of isolated one-on-one matchups that you'll occasionally get out wide. But I think what Brock does a really good job of, and having watched him prepare for this, like, Brock is a good quarterback, man. Brock's a good quarterback. There's limitations, but that dude can play. First off, he's one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the NFL right now. One of the best, and he keeps the play alive. He extends things. He makes things happen downfield. So again, third straight week, plastering receivers downfield is a must because he will keep the play alive. But he's great once he takes off. We know that got us last year in the playoffs. So how well are the Lions going to be prepared for that in this game? That's a huge question, right? It's everybody, not just the defense fronts, to back into, plaster things, attack backers, linebackers, keep it in the pocket. Like, that's going to be another stressful opponent for us this week. But it also takes me back to why I do like blitzing, getting an extra rusher involved, trying to throw off that timing, because one of the negatives is, and we've seen this, is that when the pocket collapses, similar to a guy like Kyler Murray, it becomes a problem. It's a little bit harder for him to find the checkdowns. You'll see times where he's like jumping up, trying to throw it over offensive linemen to find guys. That's where things get a little bit messy. But when they're on script, he reads coverage really early, and he's a very quick processor that immediately identifies where he wants to get with the football. But if that timing's thrown off, or that first guy's just simply not open, and then it gets beyond that, that's where things get a little bit shaky. But on time, it is beautiful watching this offense, and they start to chunk people specifically over the middle of the field. So again, I want to try to squeeze everything outside, make them consistently win outside, make them consistently win on one-on-one matchups, because they've shown that they can, specifically with a guy like Juwan Jennings, but that's where I want to make them live. You don't want them living on a 15-yard in route to George Kittle behind your backers, because that's where they're super comfortable. Now, we did see last year that, hey, tips at the line of scrimmage can be everything. You tip a ball up in the air, you get an interception for your backers. And again, with a smaller quarterback, that's great. If it's second and shorter, you're often going to get a run from this offense. Just keep that in mind. If it's second and 5 or less, you're probably going to get a run play. Against Miami played a lot of two-deep coverage, as we saw in those second down spots, and ultimately San Francisco's kind of adjustment for that.
And look, the Dolphins found a lot of success with this, whether that's a cover 3, double cloud, or even in a Tampa 2 inverted look, right? Like this, where they could play their two-deep corners. They did really well bracketing everything in.
It was a lot of boot plays. It was a lot of layers that they were creating outside of the pocket.
Now, this is one of those examples where San Fran makes the defense pay, but I don't hate the intention at all by Miami here. Under center, first down and 10, and they bring a double cornerback blitz. Now, Brock does a good job, feels it, settles down, and delivers the strike, but I kind of like the idea of this, to bring the double cornerback blitz to get after them and, again, try to create disruption.
I like the idea of two deep safeties with a blitz attached. I do like zone blitzing early. I have no issue with that. I think that zone on first down makes a lot of sense. A lot of teams do it. The issue becomes that if you're playing too deep, you're kind of opening some of those windows. If you play a single high safety, they've had answers for spot dropping. They've hit the seams. They have shown the ability to win one-on-one. I wouldn't surprise me at all if the Lions kind of leaned into that. We know the Rams run their match coverage, so the Rams had that ability to get to. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions leaned into that a little bit, like really suffocating the middle of the field and trying to make them prove they can win outside.
And you get a lot of similar route concepts, but another way you can try to squeeze the middle of the field is aggressive safety depth and quarters coverage. Now, especially teams like to run this in the red zone, but you can also do this without having to blitz. The problem is, as you see here, is if you're not getting there on time, they're a problem, because eventually somebody gets open. And a lot of times it's guys like Debo, and then they're running after the catch. So either your 4 needs to win if you're going to do this, and I don't hate this coverage either, or you have to bring an extra rusher, I believe, in this spot. But the quarters works because you can really try to squeeze the middle of the field with aggressive safety depth, and I think aggressive safety depth is on slate in this game for the Lions defense. Not as much worried about the big shot over top.
I think that's got to be the overarching game plan of how you attack this team. But if you are going to play early down 2 safeties, I love blitzing. You have to disrupt the timing somehow, get after the quarterback, make 3 backup offensive linemen prove they can pass protect, and I would get after Brock Purdy and then just try to take away the first look and really make things ugly, get them behind the chains, because they're not in a great spot to play like that right now. Just be settling back in those spots unless I'm dropping 8 to try to take everything away. But I think the Lions' approach is going to be take away everything over the middle of the field, which is why, to me, I think aggression is going to be there early. I think you're going to see early down blitzing, and I wouldn't be surprised to saw a lot of early holding down man coverage from the Lions to try to really throw off timing. Go to those Tampa 2 sets where you are dropping out a little bit wider. You are going to get those deep in breakers, which is such a big part of their offense, right in front of the safety position. Check downs, tight end screens right off of that as well. Aggressive coverage, though, is what you want to have, because if you force tight window throws, there's just not a lot of consistency from their offense right now, from what I've seen. I don't think there's a lot of consistency and success when they have to make tight window throws. Not because Brock can't throw it accurately, but because, one, he doesn't have a ton of arm velocity. So level 1 throws that are tight window tend to allow a lot of pass breakups defensively. And as much as I like the receiving core, I don't think it's an elite receiving core. And I think that when you look at the route concepts, there's a lot more, simplified routes, a lot of whip routes that take a second where you can blitz off it, or there's a lot of just straight slants. And you've seen a lot of pass breakups where if you clog the middle and you force them to just get a little bit wider, say they run double slants, inside, outside, inside's taken away, he has to go wide, you get pass breakups a lot. There's just not a lot of tight window consistency there. So the more you can make it tight window throws and make him just work those tight window throws and beat you like that all game, they will a few times, but if you make them constantly beat you like that, I think you're in a great spot. So that's how I love to attack this team just in general. Watch for concept-wise, again, is a lot of whip routes for level 1, and then it's in that level 2 area you get kind of those posts in front of safeties that they like to work. Now, if you're in more of the cover 3 looks and you are trying to kind of take away the middle field close looks a little bit more, that's where, again, you're going to get screens. They have found a way to find seam beaters, so if we're going to do that, it's going to stress our linebackers a lot in this game, which I don't have an issue with it. I'm just telling you it's going to stress our linebackers, and they're going to create layers to try to create run-after-catch opportunities. They're going to try to peel Jack, go underneath it to Debo, and have him take off. So it's fine, but there are going to be windows, and that's how they're going to create it. So hopefully you can create some pressure if you do that. And then again, their other option is simply going to be try to win one-on-one on the outside, which I actually like that ability for us as the game goes along. Juwan's been a really good route runner this year. He's gotten open in those spots, and they do have Pearsall Wad. They do have Debo in those spots. Those guys are physical. They can win, but I think if that's where they have to live, you're in a good spot defensively. And then when you get to more of those just cover 1 looks defensively, especially on third down, double slant concepts are huge, as I talked about. They'll have a clear out attached, and they're just going to try to open up the middle of the field. And again, a lot of times it's going to be Jennings one-on-one, especially when you go to cover 3, or if you're in quarters coverage and you're kind of leaving those one-on-one opportunities, a lot of deep outbreakers in those spots. It's really about playing kind of the balance there of hey, if you're playing 2 deep coverage, you're going to get a lot of high lows, right? You're going to get a lot of middle field attacking. You're going to get a lot of George Kittle and Debo racing the middle of the field, and the running back gets involved. They'll put Debo at running back. They'll use them on some angles. You're going to get a lot of that. Their go-to concepts in those spots are typically an under route with a corner attached to it. They'll create their high-low like that. They'll settle one underneath that Brock can throw, and then he can come right back over top to a cornerback route right in front of the safety, because they work everything kind of in front of the safety. Or the other concept a lot of times is they'll run a deep out, and then they'll run a whip route right underneath it. So they create those 2-man levels constantly against those looks. And then again, if Debo's at running back, expect that he's probably going to get targeted. On third down for me, if it's third and very short, expect to run. If it's third and less, they're probably running the football. I've seen a lot of teams really balance a lot of man coverage here, but a lot of either rat or robber looks trying to kind of flood the middle of the field a little bit defensively. Won't be surprised the Lions do that either. And I think it's important because I think blitzing can be dangerous here, kind of like what we saw from Chicago, where they have an ability to create pick plays. I've seen this team do it really well. They're very good schematically, and they're going to expect man coverage, so they're going to come with pick plays for us. So making them win outside more often than not is probably your best bet.
I'm giving different help based on down and distance, of course, but I wouldn't even hate some of those 2-rat looks where Lions bring a 3-man rush in man coverage to really try to cloud the middle of the field, take away the middle, let him hold on to the football, and just make him go outside and try to win.
Or in third and medium, sometimes you'll get a power run attached where they get a little bit of a lighter box and it'll go at you that way, again, especially if Debo's at running back. And then in third and long spots, that's where you get your pick plays defensively. That's probably where you're going to either want to blitz to not allow them to get there, or you're going to have some sort of middle field help, because it's usually going to happen over the middle of the field, or some deep curls on the outside, again, just trying to win one-on-one. Inside the 20, I do like playing some zone coverage here. I think this is a very smart team that utilizes stacks really well. They utilize the play action really well off of it. I like the red 2 coverage, which is red zone cover 2 that Miami was implementing, where you kind of play in between. You bracket in the outside. In a lot of ways, the idea of how you approach this team, I think, carries over to a lot of downs. I like being aggressive. I like trying to make everything work outside the numbers. And of course, we have to tackle well. It still does start with stopping the run. Our defensive line needs to get some wins up there to help us a little bit. That way we're not committing so many bodies, and we're so aggressive up front, and we're forced to play single high safety where we really can just kind of make those choices apparent. But I think the Lions, knowing Glenn, my assumption would be that he's going to come out aggressive. He's going to have a lot of single high safety. He's going to say try to beat us out wide, and I think the Niners will try to do that, and then their response off it will be screens. So we got to blow up screens, which we've done a really good job of, and their other response will be we're going to try to create some clear outs and get underneath and create some run after catch opportunities. So I think that's what the game may become. Now we flip it over to the other other side of the ball, and we talk about this 49ers defense that I think is super underrated. Nick Bosa's still there. They are very light at the linebacker room, but Fred Warner, probably the best in football. If not the best, he's one of the best in football. He's still incredible. And then their cornerback and safety room is healthy. It's a little bit young at safety with, Mustafa playing and Jair Brown potentially playing a little bit as well. They're a little bit young there, but they're good. Diamador Lenore in the slot. Renardo Green's been really solid as a rookie. He's kind of their number 2 corner, but he usually gets number 2 matchup, but he's played really good football. And then opposite, they have Charvarius Ward, who has played really well as well, and he's stuck in as their number 1 corner. He's allowed like a 112 pass rating versus a 92 that Green's given up, but he clearly takes on the number 1 matchup. I think the interesting thing about that is like the teams that I've seen have typically win at Ward, but he's their number 1, and he's not bad in those spots. That's just who teams similarly kind of go at in those spots because they get their number 1 guy on him. I think this 49ers defense is kind of underrated right now because their secondary to me is one of the better secondaries in football. Statistically speaking, it kind of plays out. 6th in passer rating allowed, 18 touchdowns, 11 picks. They're only allowing a 64% completion percentage and 183 yards per game. That's 3rd best in the NFL. It's a really good back end in my opinion. Now the run defense is a little bit more average, 4.4 yards a carry, 121 rushing yards per game, and then they're 27th in expected points added. For me, the interesting thing about this comes back to personnel first and foremost. San Francisco, like us, with where they're at linebacker, there might be a lot of nickel personnel that they're forced to play in this game, especially against heavy personnel, just because that's kind of what they've leaned into with how depleted their linebacker room has been. So the Lions may test that, say we're going to go heavy personnel, we're going to try to run at you unless you decide to put 3 backers on the field, and then they may like that matchup more with Winters to get more backers on the field for San Fran and kind of go against the backups in that spot rather than more defensive backs that play really well for this team. For me, I think it does start and kind of end with being able to run the football, and I think that this would be a great game to have Monty, but we don't, so that's why I'm rocking the Jahmyr Gibbs today, because I think this is very clear cut. Jahmyr Gibbs, it's your day to go shine. Like we need to be able to run the football in this game. I think it's going to be kind of a obvious approach. The Lions are going to try to run the football in this game, and it's going to be straightforward. It's going to work sometimes it won't, but I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to try to bully this team. So Craig's going to get involved, Jamar may get involved, Vaki may get a couple touches. I think we're going to try to run the ball against this team, especially if we're in a lot of those nickel personnel sets that are not matching us defensively. First off, we've seen a lot of success against Niners over the years, toss runs specifically. Now Warner becomes the key in these spots because he blows up everything. There's times where I'm watching him, like almost just, if you're going to run a toss, just go away from Warner. Like don't go towards him because he's just so tough to block at the second level. I think there's ways that teams have found better adjustments to that, but he's the key in any of those toss runs because of his scrape speed and his ability to make guys miss, and he's tough to connect at the second level, and he shuts down those runs on his own because he really doesn't miss. I like using lead blockers in that spot, whether it's a fullback lead. I also like using fast motion lead blocks, getting an extra body that direction to potentially try to get hands on him and not leave unblocked players, especially when we talk about second down here in a second. I would also say the matchup for that specifically is defensive ends. I actually think they played pretty well in this spot. Like, I didn't think that early, and then I kept watching. I was like, they're actually getting some really good production between Leonard Floyd, Yeturgos Matos when he's in those spots, Nick Bosa, of course, even Barrett made a couple plays at defense. Like they have dudes that can set the edge a little bit.
But I do think rather than even picking a backer, just stay away from Bosa. Make these other defensive ends prove that they can stop the run. I would focus on that maybe more so than anything here.
But I think the Lions are better there. I think we're better at tackle than what they have. So I think the Lions are going to test that. I think they should test that. And I think if it plays out how I think it will, we're going to have consistent success, and it may come back to that matchup alone. Having success here allows you to really open up the middle field attack. Like a very simplified way to look at this is like, hey, you want to open up the middle of the field, run the football well against this team. That's why I assume the Lions are going to drive that, because San Francisco is one of the best teams that I think taking away the middle of the field and just clogging up everything, playing with a ton of depth. So you have to be able to get yourself in a really manageable positions, and we'll get to that because if you get yourself into second and medium, I think that's where the explosives come into play, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But so don't have an issue with the outside zone runs either. I think they're successful, and I think, again, you could tie in dual runs, inside zones. I think they work because, one, I don't think outside of Warner they're great at taking on blockers at second level, and I do think that we could, especially with Glasgow back, even with Mahogany out there, we could create movement on those guys. Go at Malik Collins, who they acquired. Things been up and down. Anderson, who wears 69, has actually been pretty darn good, but go at Malik Collins. I think you could find success there. The Rams did that. That's kind of who they are, though. So we'll see if the Lions try to jump into that a little bit, even to the point of trap runs and wham runs we've seen teams get into, really to just say, we're going to get to these second level guys. We're going to let guys like Anderson try to attack a field, and Collins, let those guys get a field. We're getting at those second level pieces because really in that spot, we can go at guys like D. Winters. We can go at him on screen plays off the play action as well, which again, if you're successful running the football, you're going to get those guys turn around and bailing, and you're going to find success with the screen game as well.
And we'll look at this here a little bit more in a second. We talk about kind of the second down aggression aggression against the run, but it's also why motion like this is necessary because their safeties get involved. That allows them to kick defensive linemen, open up a little bit more gaps. So static plays are not great, even here against the run to set up the trap, understand what they're doing. Like you see here, a static offensive attack is not great. You got to have some movement because their safeties will disguise run defense and also pass defense.
So I don't have an issue with that. You just got to get to the second level on this team, find your best approach for it. I think Lions will start wide, and then we'll see if they start to get into more of some of those inside runs. When it comes to pass defense, though, this is where it gets interesting because on first down, they're a very heavy cover 3 team, which a lot of teams are. It's kind of their base cover 3, but there is some variety to that. I would say I'd come out flood heavy on first down. If I'm going to throw on first down, you got to create flood concepts, 3 guys on one side, overload a side of the field, whether that's with motion, whether that's with the back, just clear outs. They're going to give you the flats, and they're going to play with a lot of depth. Like I have a great example here of like the defensive back clearly getting underneath the number 1 wide receiver and allowing the flat. The pass is missed, it's incomplete. You have to be decisive to get to the flat because they're going to take those, deep corners or kind of that second level throw that you try to clear out in cover 3. They're going to take that away. They're going to give you the flat, and then they tackle well. So they're going to give you that, but on first down, with them being cover 3 heavy, there's opportunities to potentially get shots there because you are going to get one-on-ones out wide if you want to go at that. And for me, when you talk about the personnel that you run, I think there's a couple interesting strategies. Number one, I think the idea of same round slot makes some sense. I think you could find success there, but I think they do a really good job in general of taking that away. But I think you could find success there. I, again, like the idea of 12 personnel, St. Brown out wide, Jameson out wide, because I think Saint's going to get Ward. And I think that on an early, cover 3 team, I think that's where you get your boot action, sprints. That's where you get your rollouts. We're saying kind of delay it and settle down into an out route and find success there. You get some creativity on those early down plays. And I think that also puts Jamison Williams on Renardo Green, who's a very good corner, but one weakness can be vertical shots. And if you're playing a single high safety, good luck with that. So for me, that also allows that matchup to take place. I think the idea of putting a guy like Patrick out wide to get Saint in the slot could be a little bit dangerous because I don't think you'd get your best matchups. In that case, they could put Ward on JMO, and then they could put Patrick on Green, and at that point, I don't think you have great matchups out wide. I don't think it's as successful, and then it's more about St. Brown trying to work into the slot. So for the flip side, what I would like to do at times is come out with tight ends out wide, still stay in some heavy personnel, see if you can get more backers on the field, get Lenore off the field, but put tight ends out wide splits, go empty packages, put St. Brown in the slot with Jameson in the slot, work that middle field safety vertically, and that's how you can get St. Brown potentially open a little bit in those spots, even putting Gibbs in kind of the fast motion, use them on the drags, creating layers like that, but also at the same time having your tight ends be kind of the wide players to kind of flip how they're matched up defensively, especially for a heavy zone team. So I think that's kind of the 2 ways that I like to go about it, is getting St. Brown wide or getting him in some of those wide those spread looks where you can put him in the slot, you can put some of your bigger bodies out wide. Such a heavy early cover 3 team as we see that gets some really good depth. Warner is the kind of the key to this. Warner gets a lot of depth. He takes away inbreakers like that. He just finds them, turns around and finds them, and they work really well together, but he is the key there. Winters is also a really good coverage backer as well. He struggles against the run, in my opinion, but he's a pretty darn good coverage backer, even in zone. Obviously, again, the matchups here, Ward versus St. Brown, I kind of like that one. I really like Jameson versus Renardo Green. That could be the opportunity to kind of break the game open because it just fits his skill set to do so. Again, the boot outs, the boot delays, that kind of thing. Their tweak to this will be some quarters coverage and cover 6s. They'll kind of get into some of those 2 deep looks. It's not as often, but they will get into that. And again, for me, that's where you have to go at the backers because that is a spot where Warner will play 2 deep on the play, and he'll give you some of the underneath checkdowns to allow you to stay on schedule. So that's where you go at him specifically. I would expect, though, even though San Fran doesn't blitz much at all, I think they're actually the second lowest blitz rate in football, just under 17%. I would expect some blitzing. If they're going to go 2 deep safeties, if they're playing into that, I would expect they're going to blitz us. They're going to try to speed up some of our play action sets and not let Goff be comfortable because they know, as we know, that's what makes us tough if we stay on top of the chains all the time. And if that's what they're going to give up, then I assume that they're going to try to blitz out of that to not allow that to be the case. So just be prepared that you're going to get some extra rushers in those spots. If they're gonna give you those 2 deep looks and the Lions are gonna have play action success, I would attack these backers, whether that's working directly at them when they're kind of bailing out, that's crossing routes to make them kind of chase coverage rather than being able to just drop out, like make them chase coverage over the field. It's the same thing with Jameer Gibbs or Laporta, like make guys race and chase these dudes, Jameson Williams, make them chase guys over the middle of the field. Their adjustment to that typically has gone to, we're gonna go cover 2, but that's where the middle field starts to open back up, which is typically what they want to take away, so they don't like to live in that area, but that's what it'll open up. You get some of these second down and medium looks, here's where I think shots come into play, because I think second down and medium, they want to shut down the run. From what I've seen, they're like, we're stopping the run. We're not going to give you a first down and second down and 5. So for me, this is where you open up shot opportunities. That's where play action's huge, because you can get them to bite because they're going to be aggressive. That's where they'll drop a safety into the box aggressively, and they're going to play the run. I think there is where you get your play action shot. You leave max protect, you get Jameson on a deep post, and that's how you open up shot plays, is efficient first down rushing, second down shot plays. The other flip side of that is also screens, because they're going to be aggressive, so run a screen, run an RPO screen like we saw last week. Little things like that can be attached, and then if you get to second and long, run the football. Like if you're backed up at second and long, run the football, close the distance, make it a third and manageable. Those spots, again, they're going to get back to those two deep safeties looks. They're going to cloud everything. They're going to try to force you back underneath. So in my opinion, I would run the football in second and long. And then again, one-on-one matchups, right? Play action, one-on-one matchups. I think you go at Ward with St. Brown, maybe Tim Patrick. We'll see how that plays out, but I like with St. Brown. And then Renardo Green against Jameis, another week where he can prove that I can go win one-on-one on the outside and be crucial for us in a game like this. That's a matchup that I'm watching for. Then when you get the third down, they're a very heavy man coverage team, but it is seemingly based on opponent. Against LA, it was a lot more zone coverage. 0, 2-man coverage. If it's third and long, 10+, then you'll get zone, you'll get two deep, you'll get quarters, you'll get looks like that. But if it's anything in between, a lot of times it's man. I love bunches against this team. I think you can create openings that way, right? You can create switches that give yourself leverage in the coverage. Again, they like having kind of those zone players, especially over the middle of the field, where they'll try to clog it up, is what my expectation would be. So I would utilize bunches, especially towards the outside, because I assume they're going to settle down on the inside. Being said, we also saw that on like 3rd and 1, they will go zone. It's similar to what they do in goal line. Like they don't play man, they play zone. That way they can't just create rub routes and get first downs. They'll play like cover 3 in those spots. They'll do the same thing from like the 2-yard line. They'll play cover 3. Green Bay did this well. We use kind of like the flat and the little stick route. That's how we create separation. We may do that again, but a big part of that as well is fast motion. I think that San Fran comes out and they run some real zone against us in this game, because I don't think they're going to want to be picked off by man beaters, because I think they're expecting that we're going to be prepared for that. May feel like will have less consistency if they go to zone coverage on 3rd and manageable. I think for the Lions, it's going to be crucial that they have motion. Like I think it's going to be important that they have movement, that they're not static. 1, to get a sense of what the coverage actually is, but 2, to not be static, not just be stagnant offensively, where they can really take away some of those zone coverage windows, because even when they're in zone, they take away a lot of tight window throws. So I think it's important that you're not static offensively. There's a lot of fast motion, and that's where I think that comes into play, is a lot of third down looks, because I do expect that just like goal line, they're going to be playing more zone against us, kind of like they did against the Rams. And I think fast motion, not static offense, is important, because static offense with the Rams got them into trouble, and they were not converting in those spots. Do like against man coverage, though. I still do like the safety matchup. So I talked about some of the ones out wide, but I love going at their safeties. If you get Mustafa to step down, or even Hufanga, and they're trying to match up in man, usually it's Mustafa, I would go at that guy. Sam Laporta, I'd go at him specifically. Go at him with a running back. Whoever you get on that matchup, I think that's one of your most advantageous matchups. And again, goal line stuff, you're going to get cover 3 when you're really close. When you get to red zone, it's going to be a lot of that quarters. Sometimes they'll take away the seam, and then they're going to try to force you back underneath again. So run the football. So for me in this one, again, I think it's kind of straightforward. Run the ball early downs, find success, and if you can find that, you'll open up shot plays off it, and that's how you'll break the game open into this game. I think we're going to need a little bit of creativity, but I think we can do a lot of things that we're typically do on early downs to find success. And then again, 3rd down, I would expect zone, and I would expect movement from the Lions offense to clear some things open. For me in this one, I think that San Fran has an underrated defense. I think they can absolutely take the ball away. On cover 3, where against Rams, he had a pick, Hufanga did, he just dropped it, but he stepped down from that post safety alignment and hit him right off the chest. That's where you get shots on this team, right? When they're expecting, when you're playing sticks, or they're expecting run, that's where you create shots. But at the same time, that's how dangerous they are to play the sticks, is because they have guys like that just lurk. Him and Fred Warner are a problem, and they got very physical corners across the board. I'll be telling the rest pregame, hey, watch for DPI, because they're going to be physical as heck. That's how they're built. And I'd tell the rest, and put it in their ear, yo, watch for defensive pass interference. They're going to be all over our guys when we go one-on-one. Just watch for that. I'd get right in their ear about it. But at the same time, I think that this is a team that can absolutely take the ball away. They still have a really good pressure piece. Play action will help minimize that, Nick Bosa, but also potentially some double teams. I don't think they're great outside of that. They're only about a 21% pressure rate team this season. I don't think they're great outside of Bosa there. But that being said, if the Lions play on script, they're going to find a lot of success in this game. If not, this thing will be interesting. I think that this one maybe is a little bit more lower scoring. Usually I'm wrong on this, but right now I'm at Lions 23, San Francisco 14. That's my score. The Lions are like 3.5, that kind of ballpark. Shout out to Bet US for that if you want to bet on it. But right now I got the Lions 23-14. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This could potentially be for the 1 seed. It could also potentially mean basically nothing. But either way, we want to get this one back. On the road in San Fran, we want this one. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, for watching, and I'm out.